Hello and welcome to the FSF PopCast Live Edition. Hello and welcome to the FSF PopCast, the show that makes you wish the memory erasing devices in the movie Men in Black weren't fictional. Oh, hey, look, I got a co-host. Ta-da! And he's muted. I got a co-host, but he's a muted co-host. He's talking. His lips are moving furiously over there on the other side. This is fantastic. If you're listening to the audio replay, this is probably the best 30 seconds of comedy I've had in a little while. This is fantastic. So it's just like, it's like Charlie Brown's teacher. But, we have a voice.
This is good?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Well, as you were saying, I had a memory flash thingy.
It was like Charlie Brown's teacher. The lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. It was fantastic.
Isn't that just what your face looks like all the time?
Pretty much, yeah. You've talked with my wife, okay.
All right, but before we get into tonight's show, we need to say our thanks to our show partner, Level Up Sabers. Let's roll that nerdy footage.
Doing it.
Links for Level Up Sabers can be found in our show notes and our comment sections.
And don't forget, this saber is better than a stick, because that's what Master Allen says, and it's legit. And so we also remind you that the link is right there. It's on the screen. You guys can use that as you see fit, and that helps our show by you buying one of these awesome Level Up sabers like I have here in my hand that are supremely well built and very durable, by the way. I'd like to point that out. Your purchasing that helps us to continue to grow. We get a cut of that, and it helps us to offset our monthly costs in order to put this show on for you. If for whatever reason, though, you don't want to do that and you think, well, you know what, that's not for me. Well, then we have another way for you to help the show. You can always buy us a coffee. We take the proceeds there. Same thing. That helps offset our monthly bills, and we get to have fun that way. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do what the banner says down below. Please remember to click like and subscribe. So at the beginning of this show tonight, we are sitting at 699 subscriptions. It'd be really cool to hit 700, before the end of the show. No pressure.
Even cooler at 1,000.
Well, at 1,000, you get to see Nick and I dance around with lightsabers doing the Frankenstein dance from Young Frankenstein. So putting on the Ritz. So yeah, that's going to happen. It's definitely going to be problematic in a lot of ways, but also should be funny for the majority of you. So, but yeah. So anyway, if you have an opportunity to, please click the like and subscribe. It helps us to continue to grow. We've got some, at the end of the show, we'll talk about in just a few minutes. We've got some awesome guests coming up. Some pre-recorded interviews from people out in the sci-fi and pop culture world that you guys are for sure going to want to be, well, in attendance for, I guess. Maybe is that the phrase I'm looking for? Listen to and watch. How about that? You're going to want to be in attendance. Well, let's go with it. Yeah, you want to be in attendance for it. What the hell? Let's go with that one.
I'll give you a hint for one of them. Strawberries.
Okay, I get the hint now. It took me a second. And the sad thing is I'm the one I was actually in the interview, and I'm still sitting here going, huh? Say what now?
All right. So you have more to say?
One of our first guests on the list is not here yet, so just go ahead and introduce our other two.
So we have Robert and Gio from the Science Fiction Remnant.
Welcome, guys.
Hello. I thought this is where the party was at.
I just had to make fun of Blake.
I love it.
How you doing, guys?
As soon as your head popped on the screen and you're doing, I was like, I know exactly what he's doing. All right.
Can I get rid of it a lot? Because I did that many times in my show too.
Well, hey guys, this is Robert and Gio from Science Fiction Remnant. They have become good friends of ours, and we've worked closely with these guys on a couple different things. They've been here on our show. They've been kind enough to have us and on their show and put up with us over there. And you may have noticed too that every Wednesday when we do crossover connection, these guys were actually our very first crossover connection, and we shared out their episode first, and we've had a lot of fun with these guys. So hoping that you guys know that as well. Oh, we just got a subscriber. We just hit 700. Who's your daddy? That's you.
Yay.
Man, I'm telling you, I posted this link right now, like in maybe minimum 10 to 15 groups.
There you go.
So
awesome.
At least one we're gonna get.
There you go. That's not so bad. Hey, actually, we're at 701. Woo-hoo.
Welcome to the dark side.
All right. Well, welcome, our fellow nerds. We're glad you're here. Hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. But hey, before we go too much farther, Robert, Gio, why don't you guys take a minute, tell everybody about your show, where they can find it, and why you guys are just so doggone cool.
I'm the feisty one, and he's the nice one. Robert, you're the organized one, so you can give better details.
Yeah, we're basically that conversation that you have on your way to a Comic-Con. We like to talk about all kinds of sci-fi properties. Doesn't matter where they come from. It could be a movie, TV show, books, games, doesn't matter. And our show is Science Fiction Remnant, could be found everywhere. And if you don't find us somewhere, reach out to me. I'll make sure it gets there.
It's all across the galaxies.
Yeah. Because it used to be that you guys were just an audio, and then you guys switched, correct? And then you started doing you're releasing the YouTube episodes about 3 to 4 weeks later after the audio episode airs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Initially, we wanted to do a live, but it didn't really work. So the way that we turned out for season 2 is we basically released the episode exactly a month after the audio episode releases. So if you hear a bunch of like shenanigans going on and you don't know what's going on, yeah, go back to YouTube and watch. You're going to see Captain Chaos doing this thing.
Fair enough. Let's see.
Oh, I mean, they can catch me on TikTok being a total clown too.
Oh,
There
yes.
you go. Absolutely. All right. So guys, make sure you guys go out and follow Science Fiction Remnant. Give them the love they deserve. We, like I said, we've been doing a lot with these guys. And hi, King Azu Okra. I know I'm slaughtering your name, and I am so sorry. But King, we'll just call you King. How about that, King? Welcome. And I believe I was our 700th subscriber. So
nice.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, man. I know where he's coming from, man. Thank you.
That's very cool. We do appreciate it. And we're glad to have you here and hope you enjoy the conversation as we get going. While we're waiting for Nick to sort out his internet issues, because Gio has shared those across the internets and has blessed Nick with jumpy internet, apparently. So I think he's rebooting, resetting everything.
I'm proud of
he'll
him.
be back in. But yeah, oh yeah. Hey, Jason. Yeah, we are watchless tonight. Kathleen needed a night off, and John was under the weather, so he was not planning on filling her seat for tonight. So hopefully we'll see them in the comments and making fun of me as I strive to learn a little bit more about Star Trek tonight. So, but that's our topic for tonight. As the note said, we want to talk about Star Trek in the Prime Directive. Now, to set the stage here, I am, and good evening to you as well, Jason. So I am the newbie to Star Trek. I am the noob. I may have made fun of Star Trek my entire life, said I would never ever watch it, that it was dumb, that it was boring. And now that I'm a little bit older, I'm 46 years old. Now that I'm a little bit older, I actually see a lot of the sound logic of things, and there have been episodes that I have watched, even of the original series, even though I can't stand Captain Kirk, still can't. That's going to be an issue for some.
He's a provocateur. I mean, it's his nature.
Yeah, I just can't swing with him. I tried, man. I just can't do it. So I bailed on the original series and jumped over to the Next Generation, and I'm about 5 episodes in, and we have a Nick. He's back. And
Maybe?
possibly for a little bit at least. So the nature of tonight's conversation is I have no interest in bagging on Star Trek. I'm like I said, I'm coming into this. I have some questions about the Prime Directive. I have some confusion about the Prime Directive. I have a specific example that I want to mention to you guys. And I'm hoping to not only get comments from Robert and Gio, of course, because they're here on screen, but if you have comments about anything that we're saying, whether you agree, you disagree, whatever, go ahead and put it in the comment section here. We'll put it up on the screen and we'll try and talk about it for as much as we can. By the way, Nick Jason says hello to the stash.
Hello.
So, all right. So the question I put out for tonight's live show was, is the Prime Directive a good rule or guideline? And does it make sense? So what I'd like to do is and Nick sent this to me a couple days ago, but I'm just going to briefly read the Prime Directive in its entirety. It's 2 paragraphs long. And that way everybody understands what we're talking about, and not just me going, golly, I don't understand this. Okay, so here it is.
You're going to tend to make us all confused.
That is the intention, yes. Because if I'm going to be confused, I want everybody to be confused. I don't want to be the only dummy sitting here going, exactly. I don't want to be the only dummy sitting here going, well, how come you guys understand it? So, all right. The Prime Directive prohibits Starfleet personnel and spacecraft from interfering in the normal development of any society and mandates that any Starfleet vessel or crew member is expendable to prevent violation of this rule. As the right of each sentient species to live in accordance with its normal cultural evolution is considered sacred, no Starfleet personnel may interfere with the normal and healthy development of alien life and culture. Such interference includes introducing superior knowledge, strength, or technology to a world whose society is incapable of handling such advantages wisely. Starfleet personnel may not violate this Prime Directive even to save their lives and or their ship, unless they are acting to right an earlier violation or an accidental contamination of said culture. This directive takes precedence over any and all other considerations and carries with it the highest moral obligation. So that is the Prime Directive. So here's my example, and here's where I'm confused.
Like the worst example ever, but okay.
Nick, don't make me kick you out of the chat tonight. We haven't even gotten started yet. You're like, fine, whatever. Hey, there we go. Hey, Jesse from Crusher Convo. If you remember last week, Jesse was on, and oh, you're not late, Jesse. You're right on time. We're just getting into the Prime Directive. Go ahead and duck. So, because I'm pretty sure I will be from time to time. So here's my example. Now, I am also putting this out there with a very large grain of salt because everybody I've talked to has told me that this may not be the best example, and that even the cast was not happy with this example of the Prime Directive. Nick's over there shaking his head like, yes, why are we talking about this? Anyway, so here it is. And Jesse has already begun to duck. She's smart. All right, so in season 1, episode 4, there's an episode called
It's
Code.
actually episode 3.
Is it?
It is, because I went to go watch it today, and I'm like, that's not
Is it episode 3?
Yes, it is.
What's episode 4?
I don't know. I didn't watch that.
All right, so it's episode 3. It's called Code of Honor. All right, so in the course of this show, Tasha Yar, the head of security, is kidnapped by the group of people that had transported onto their ship with their own transporter. They did not use the Starfleet's transporter. They transported onto the ship. So apparently and obviously they have a depth of technology, and they may not have the most accurate technologies and everything, but they did have transporter technology. And, they have a vaccine that nobody else in the world has or in the universe has, and they need it to correct this illness, this infection that's going on. But the head honcho, I don't know if he was a king or whatever, but he's like really enamored with Yar. And he makes it so they can abduct her and bring her back to his country, his planet. Picard is ready to go down and get Yar back, and then he's told we can't do that. It's a violation of the Prime Directive to go and get back our person.
I don't think he actually said that, though.
Well, just let me tell my story, okay? Okay, Nick.
Okay, fine, finish.
Okay, but they waited. Regardless, they waited like 24 hours before they did anything. And then when they get down to the planet and try and reason with these people to please let our people go, he forces Yar to participate in a duel to the death with his first wife for a man that she wasn't interested in and had no interest in being married to. And in order to secure her freedom. So instead of just going down and taking her back, that happened.
Oh
So
my,
what
that sounds like a reality show. Marry him or kill him.
yeah, exactly. So my question is, how does the Prime Directive, based on what we read, does the Prime Directive, is that what's really holding them back from doing that, or was that just a plot point at that point for the show, and just confusing the daylights out of me? Because coming from a Star Wars background, and I'm putting this all out on the table, coming from a Star Wars background, there's no way that Han Solo or Anakin Skywalker, or Luke for that matter, would have sat there and let his friends be kidnapped and not go after them, just because there was a rule that said maybe we shouldn't do this.
So
For the record, since you bring the Star Wars, I think that before Luke knew that Leia was his sister, he would have let Han Solo get the beans spilled out.
You're probably not wrong on that one. Yeah.
So,
all right. So go ahead.
Right off the bat, in the episode, it does mention that those people reached out to the Federation. As soon as someone actually reaches out, Prime Directive no longer matters.
Okay, so then why did what's the counselor Troy? Why did Counselor Troy tell him that we couldn't do it because of the violation of Prime Directive?
I don't remember that part, but I could be wrong.
It's totally in there. I watched it twice.
Do you know where?
That episode was so bad I watched it twice. It confused me so much.
If I may add, I think
absolutely.
It is a case per case basis. Although this might not be the best example of Prime Directive, the Prime Directive kind of applies here. Because if you look at the Prime Directive, many people think this is related to pre-warp technology civilizations, which in turn it does. But it applies to everyone. Kind of like how it would apply if a political person from one country visits another country and commits a crime. It's kind of like the same thing. The Prime Directive. No. I'm talking about
like diplomatic immunity. Is that what you're trying to say?
Kind of like, everybody has their own rules.
Okay.
Like you'll notice the behavior of Starfleet within, like say for example, when you visit Kronos, which is a Klingon world, it's completely different than if they go, say for example, Romulan or Romulus, or if they go to planet Vulcan. Even though those are members of the Federation, there's
no planet Vulcan.
Huh?
There's no planet for the Vulcans, remember?
Man, you're gonna make me cry.
Thanks, JJ Trek.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it is a case per case basis, and depending on the planet and depending on the culture, depending on the situation. Once in the past, it was said, that it was very fluid. As a matter of fact, I think it's still very fluid. It's an ever-changing, kind of like the rules of a country and how you can get amended as cases come up. So at the beginning, it was very fluid. Then they rein it in and said, okay, this is as it is. And if you break it, that's it. And then after that, the Federation decided, okay, hold on a second. We have a lot of different scenarios coming in. So maybe we should change this rule. So now they have it's basically up to the captain, but he has to be able to defend his reasoning and his decisions on a board once it gets back to Starfleet.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
board decides if he goes to jail or not.
So in other words, which makes sense, is that his action has to be justified. To
Very
exactly,
justified.
it has to be
Okay.
justified.
So it's a moving target, but as long as he can justify his actions to the Starfleet command board as to why he went against
The directive.
the directive, it's whether or not he gets punished or allowed to continue as captain. Is that what I'm
And
understanding?
correct. And let me know if you agree with this, but on this particular episode, it was very delicate because it was more of a diplomatic mission than anything else because they needed that medicine.
Right.
So and this is, I guess, partly why everybody says this is the worst case scenario of a Prime Directive, because although it was applied to this whole scenario, it was, you were more concentrated into what that diplomatic mission meant for the Federation, and how many people would die from its failure.
Okay.
You will also notice that throughout the episode, they continued to show respect for this planet's culture.
Correct. I did notice that. Yeah.
So they technically continued with, okay, we'll just play your game. We will follow your rules since that's the rules you want to play by. And since they didn't want to play by the Federation rules, they're playing by that planet's rules. And so them interfering is not actually interfering because it's part of their culture. And they just use their culture against them.
Okay. So I think part of where my confusion in all of this comes in is that it's always been my understanding, and again, this is from a very non-Star Trek understanding, so just bear with me here for a second. My understanding always was that you couldn't interfere as long as the other culture, because I think of like, what is it? It's the JJ trilogy, the second one, the Wrath of Khan remake. Because I think of like, there's the planet where all the people coated in the white stuff, and they're obviously a very primitive culture, and so they weren't supposed to interfere. So I think about that, and then to me that instance of the Prime Directive makes absolute sense, because here's a warp ship and this big massive Enterprise Federation ship that obviously these people have no way of contemplating what this is, or what how they got from spears and bows and arrows to laser pointers and things that can go boom, and so for me that made sense. But in this instance, here's a group of people that were clearly and I understand the diplomatic portion of it, and I understand that this is a bad example, but it's the only example I have right now because I'm still young into Star Trek. But here we have a people who have similar technologies to the Federation with the transporting and everything else. And I guess for me, I don't understand, and I know that it's written in there, it's very clearly in the Prime Directive, that they cannot, the Starfleet vessel and the crew are all expendable. So
Yes.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding why the crew is so expendable, but yet the captain is able to puts a high value on his crew, but at that point he just has to go. That's where I'm having trouble with the Prime Directive is, okay, so your crew is so awesome and so important to you until something goes boom, and then all of a sudden is like, well, we got to leave them. Okay, bye.
I will tell you, you will. As far as I'm aware, that does not happen. So
It isn't. It is written in that manner. I don't remember seeing a specific scenario, but everyone is spendable, including the captain, when it comes down to the Prime Directive.
But I mean, I guess that also is handled at a hierarchy level too, and that's where the divide's created too. Is like inside every starship, it goes up to the commander, but beyond that, then it's the commander representing the whole crew, and being responsible for whatever his crew does. So it creates
Okay.
also it creates that division between accountability when this comes to.
Okay. All right. So Jesse's telling us that Picard could have stopped what was happening to the people, but they could not interfere. He had to not do anything, even if he felt it was wrong. It's a slippery slope.
She was
Okay.
talking about another episode, Symbiosis. Just so you know.
Oh, well, I still think that applies here in this comment as well for this episode, because I'm trying to see how it could be a slippery slope in Code of Honor with the interactions with these people and making sure that I think he did all he could to try and respect them and everything, and trying to retrieve his crew member. But like I said, I'm having a hard time understanding why the crew gets expendable over people that, you understand what I'm having a hard time explaining.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but when you look at it, let's put aside our sentimental value for a person as a person. Look at them as numbers, assets, and liabilities. And basically, this member of the crew became a liability the moment that he compromised the Prime Directive. So then you have to wage in what's gonna be worse: going there and actually put to risk this whole code of conduct for the life of one person that is gonna affect a whole population, and it probably is gonna take a whole different course as it advances because of this interference that they're gonna have now with this community. You see, so it's like it's like saying, "Oh, I love this person, so I'd rather save him than saving 50 people." But another person, no, this person is dead. 50 people are more worth saving. You know.
Okay,
that's the cold calculative way, logical way to see it without being human about it.
Okay, but that actually helps me because I'm looking at them I'm watching the show and I'm seeing the relationships that Picard is establishing with each one of his crew members and everything else. And to me, so I'm watching this going, okay, so he's friends with all these people. Why isn't he fighting for his friends? But okay, so if I'm looking at them rather as assets and just a number,
yeah,
as a numbered member of the crew, in order to you're sacrificing the one for the good of the many, that actually makes sense to me, and I can wrap my head around that a little bit better than just going, well, why the heck didn't you just go down there phasers of blasting and get his people back? Because clearly these people have weapons and transport machines. What the heck is going on here?
Just teleport it out of there.
Right, just transport her out.
Make it think, oh, it's a miracle. Oh my god.
Right, that's why I didn't understand. Why didn't he just beam her out? I mean, they have transport ability. Why didn't he just like,
That's the thing. I just made a joke about it. Then these people are gonna believe that we're gods or something. He was a god. He just vanished. It's a miracle. He's gonna tamper with the natural evolution of this community until they reach a type of society advanced enough to become part of the Enterprise universe. And be part of that of the groups and be on Starfleet ships and stuff like that. But I mean, I get what you're saying too, because that's also what. Every show where you actually get to see interactions between different kind of role characters, it creates that kind of like you invest yourself in them, so you don't want them to die, you don't want them to go off, or you want it, at least if you're gonna die, to be in some heroic way or something that, okay, I'm gonna remember you.
And look, I'll be honest with you. 5 episodes in, I'm already well more invested in TNG than I ever was in TOS. So,
I agree with Jesse. I agree with Jesse's comment here. The captain is responsible for his crew.
Yep.
In everything that happens, he has to figure out a way. And I like the way that Jesse, worded that sentence. They had to trick the king into releasing Yard. So they got to figure out a way to save the crew member and not break, not only the Prime directives, but the rules of that world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I wanted to add to that is, we have seen this off camera, but it has happened now very frequently, where an entire ship becomes a liability and is lost to Prime Directive.
Okay.
Now, wrap your hand around that, and if you consider for like the NC-1701, it is over in between 1,000 to 6,000 people just wrap your hand around that. Losing a
Okay.
ship with all those people they had, families, kids, not civilian personnel as well as military personnel.
Give to the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund. So anyway,
and I mean, Robert, just to expand bigger on what you're saying, still that starship, it's actually spendable when you look at what it represents when it branches out to bigger things, the whole Starfleet Union. You know, if it's in between you choosing that starship is goner or it's gonna break a code that might actually throw down a whole system, trust me, the other starships are gonna come to actually get rid of that starship and blow it up with everything inside of it. Do you see? At the end of the day, it's just hierarchies and it's a whole system of conduct that it has to be kept in place so order exists too. You know, so that's why they are very tricky and very picky about tampering with it. Is because it's like trying to change the future or something. You know, it's like the past. You go back and you change something, but it might actually have very very worse repercussions because of
Okay.
that small little act. So
And
it's like
that's
a ripple
why-
effect.
That's exactly what you just said there is exactly the reason why the Prime Directive have been amended throughout the years.
Yeah.
And if you look at this episode in particular, they really needed to be careful because, like they were saying, like many, many lives depended on this vaccine. They tried to replicate the vaccine just so they could just leave these people alone and just like not have to deal with
right.
it.
Yeah.
But they couldn't replicate it because there was something very specific on this planet or about this vaccine that could only come from this planet, and there's nothing else. So they had to follow their customs and do some things and trickery to be able to get these vaccines to the other people, and
Okay.
Yep.
that's about it.
I mean,
So
to us, it's seen as trickery. But if you look at it from a diplomatic perspective too, in other words, they're trying to speak their cultural language. Because
right. So
at the
they're
end of the
paying
day,
honor to their culture.
exactly. And basically, it's like if they don't try to follow their way of communication and their cultural ways, they're not gonna be able to even communicate or get to any consensus on why you should listen to me and why I had to bring here and it's good for you. You know, it's like that old saying: you cannot help somebody that doesn't want to be helped.
Right. Yeah. Even Jeremy here says that in Discovery they blew up the USS Glenn in order to keep their secrets.
Thank you.
So I'm
Jeremy.
assuming he means the show Discovery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't gotten there yet, Jeremy. You should have said spoilers. No, I'm just kidding, buddy. We're good.
It's been more than 24 hours, Tim.
It has. It's by my own rule. It's been actually my own rule is 72 hours, but it's definitely been more than 72 hours. So I guess I can't get on Jeremy's case too much. No, thank you for adding that to the conversation, Jeremy. So, all right. So let me ask you this: for those who are coming into the Trek world from outside, nerdiverses, am I the only one who's confused by the Prime Directive, or is this universally confusing, or am I just the only special kid in the back of the class going, "Hi, I don't know what's going on"?
I think you're focusing on the wrong aspect. Don't worry about the Prime Directive.
Well,
Okay, but
It's
the Prime
paradoxical.
Directive
It's paradoxical.
so central to everything that's going on.
The problem is that if you think about it and you look how it's acted upon and it's never the same, the Prime Directive is a paradoxical directive, you know, because the fact that it's in there doesn't mean that you're gonna follow it to the letter, to the T, every single time. And just like Robert mentioned earlier, it gets amended because it's part of society and communities. We're ever changing and evolving, and we have to adapt. If we don't adapt, we become stagnant, and we'll find roadblocks.
I want to add in contrast to what is been said. I think that partly the reason why you're having such a hard time understanding the Prime Directive is due to the fact that you're not seeing this in a timeline order. And let me explain what I'm saying.
Okay.
I had this conversation with my wife. Which, by the way, you all know, she started watching everything in timeline order. She actually asked me to do this because she got tired of me talking about it, and she's being lost. And some of the
She did
things
that? I don't believe it.
ask her. You ask her. You ask her, dude. And especially about the Prime Directive, right? And I think I know where you're coming from. And I have kind of like, let's see if I can explain this. But we're all the way out to episode 13 on season 1. I have done this multiple times. I think this is the first time that I am enjoying it because there's so much Trek now that I added to that timeline order list, which by the way, a lot of people ask me, how are you going to do that? Because some of the orders are, it's impossible. Yeah, I made I made my own, uh, liberties in the order. But the thing is, because she's watching everything in order, like, let me see if I can bring this to perspective. The episode, I think it was called Dear Doctor. I think it was, well, regardless of what the name of the episode was, this is in Enterprise.
Okay.
There's a phrase where Jonathan Archer says, someday my people are going to come up with some sort of doctrine, something that would tell us what we can and cannot do. I'm going to have to remind myself and I'm making this shorter and paraphrasing it, obviously. I'm going to have to remind myself every day that we didn't come up here to play God. And I found that very, really, really cool in the fact that I get to see where it started. Then we fast forward to Strange New Worlds. I can't remember the episode number. It might have been I can't remember exactly. But Robert April says the console is not happy about it. They're doubling down, renaming it the Prime Directive. So you're starting to see it form. And as you watch in order, you get to see what I was talking about, how it was all chaotic at the beginning. They're trying to be reactive to situations that were happening, especially in the TOS era. And as the situations were coming on, they were amending it. They got to a point where it was like, okay, this is ironclad. And then they went back because now we have doctors and people with really ethical dilemmas, bringing us like, you can't make this like the solid rule. This has to be malleable. So now Starfleet made it. So my point is, in making this long story, is that if you watch it in order, it might make it easier for you to understand, because you could see when we did not have it, the issues we had when we created it, the issues we had, and issues going forward all the way to like today's Trek. If that makes any sense.
No, actually it does, because I think of, sometimes it's easier to understand a law that's being, and that's basically what the Prime Directive is. It's a rule, it's a guideline, it's a law for the Federation. It's easier to understand it if you're there when it's being built, it's being made, the intent behind it. So yeah, that makes sense to me, and I can go, okay, well, that makes sense. Jesse also says that I need to see more examples of when the Prime Directive is an issue throughout the series, and you can kind of understand each situation differently, if that makes sense. That absolutely does make sense, Jesse. By the way, Jesse from Crusher Convo, if I hadn't mentioned that before, go check out Crusher Convo, they're awesome. Anyway,
I would like to add, I have not cared more about the Prime Directive than right now. Like, I've been able to watch Star Trek without actually knowing what the Prime Directive is per se, and just
heresy.
Okay, I knew what it was, but I just didn't care because I felt it didn't actually
I retry what I say. This is blasphemy now.
It didn't move me to want to be like, no, you must follow the Prime Directive. Or
we have a bad boy here.
See, but I went into Trek with the idea, the thought in my head, and maybe this is kind of where I messed myself up with this. But I went into watching both, because like I said, I'd only seen bits and pieces of Trek over the years. I had watched a couple of the movies, I'd watched a little bit of TOS as reruns when I was a kid, that kind of thing. But only recently, within the last year, have I really gotten into any type of Trek at all. And so for me, it was going into this going, okay, so the Prime Directive is this all encompassing thing. It affects everything that's going on. It affects everything that's, and then in my understanding was it was only if the other culture was a subculture, a third world type culture versus a first world type culture, without the technologies and primitive and all those other things. That made sense to me. And then so to see these two cultures that were pretty, pretty on par with each other, and all of a sudden going, well, that violates the Prime Directive. I'm going, does it? That doesn't make sense. That's not a thing. And so it was very confusing to me.
I have two examples, if you don't mind me going forward into your Trek journey.
Well, we've already kind of done that a little bit tonight, so why not?
There's these examples are, how can I say, there's a debate. Let me put it this way. So I'm sure we might probably have a common war going with what I'm about to say. But I guess this is on point to kind of help you understand. You're familiar with the Klingons.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the Klingons are still, for the Federation, the Prime Directive applies. Even for the Vulcans, the Prime Directive applies. If you look back, for example, let's move on from my example, and I'll go back to it. When the Vulcans first contacted humans, right? They contacted humans after our first warp flight.
Okay.
So for them, I guess, because every culture has their own Prime Directive, it's only when you're a member of the Federation who you had to follow that rule. They contacted Earth, and they did the first union of two separate planets, and that's where history of Starfleet started, basically. But a lot of humans got upset because, and you could probably see this if you ever watch Enterprise. A lot of humans got upset because they're, doing these things. They're losing lives on their experiments on space travel, and we have the Vulcans. Who we know they're doing this successfully. They had thousands and thousands of years on space travel, not saying a thing, and actually not even wanting us to go out. As a matter of fact, just to get the NX-01 out of space dock was a mission and a half because of the Vulcans. And that's, by the way,
Okay.
if you're not familiar to, that's the NX is a configuration given to ships that are experimental. Only when they become not experimental, they get the NCC, which you're familiar with the Enterprise.
Sure.
The NX-01 was the Enterprise. It was the first Enterprise. So in that aspect, it's kind of like the opposite, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
The Vulcans didn't want to contaminate our natural progression into becoming what we are supposed to become. And if you think about it, it is a good thing that happened, because if they, for example, had meddled with us, we might not had the Starfleet that we have now. It might have been something completely different. You don't know what would happen if they will change the natural evolution of our civilization.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm trying
And
to.
that's just the opposite to the argument.
I mean, I'll be devil's advocate to what Robert says, and I agree with the way that Vulcans act, actually, because it's like they don't want our scientific evolution to be tarnished by their more advanced technologies. They want us to get there on our own, and that's why the Prime Directive would have actually been put in place here, and being seen as a violation.
Okay.
It's like you can call it as intergalactic capitalism because you're owner of the nicer car and you know how to get it. Doesn't mean that you have to tell me or bring me my nicer car too now because so I can drive like you drive. You know, you see, everybody has to
Okay.
get there on their own effort. So if you look at us as like a species, as a collective, we are individual as each species at the end until we
It's
reach
like
that
giving,
context where we're in the same place.
it's like
Okay.
giving a Ferrari to a teenager.
There's a reason why most people that are driving super sport cars have gray hair.
There you go. Jesse again from Crusher Convo says we love Picard and Crusher from TNG. We talk a lot about them on Crusher Convo, and there is more than once a conflict between him and the Prime Directive and her
Oh
with her
yes.
Hippocratic oath. She goes,
Oh
"It's great.
yes.
Go Bev." If you haven't caught
Oh
on,
yes.
she's talking about Beverly Crusher. That's why it's called Crusher Convo. She's a Bev head. So,
And
and
and based on what she said, it is something that you're going to encounter a lot. Anyone, and I mean anyone from the science division of Starfleet, anyone will always have an issue with the Prime Directive.
okay. So basically, I need to learn to look at the Prime Directive as a situation by situation moving target based upon the captain's viewpoint and what he's willing to try and go to bat for with the Federation.
Jack Sparrow said it best about
Oh boy.
the pirate code.
It's more of a guideline.
They're more like guidelines.
Okay.
Let me,
All right. So
let me give you
I went into this looking at hard, fast. This is what it is. This is what it has to be. So I need to look at it as more of a moral flexibility guideline based upon the morals of whoever the captain is and what they hold as important.
I think
would that be accurate?
That's very accurate. And I think that another factor that might be actually hindering in how you receive this is when you say you're an all-time Star Wars fan.
Right.
And Star Wars is a completely different universe and a completely different scenario because over there it's black and white. It's actually tyranny and then resistance.
Right.
There's
good people, there's bad people, and the bad people get laser swords in their bellies. That's the way it works. Okay.
There's a lot of gray area here.
Well, and I'm okay with that as long as I understand that, because I think that, like I said, I think for me it was just the initial understanding and going into this with such a rigid view of what the Prime Directive is and what the Prime Directive isn't, that when we got to this episode, instead of it being like a yield sign and going, wonder why Picard did that, it was a stop sign and me going, what in the heck is going on? Why is this happening? Where, and it was very confusing, almost kind of off-putting to me, about what was going on in the episode in the series so far. But like I said, I'm 5 episodes in. I'm already well more emotionally invested in this than I ever thought of being with TOS. So, although I like Spock and Bones, but if Kirk could have been vacuum sucked out into space, I'd have been just as fine too.
So, you kept mentioning her quote of the Prime Directive, and this is in the scene where Yar is like in a room or something, and
by the way,
Picard and
Yar.
Picard and Troy are talking with her, and Troy speaks up and says how simple all this would be without the Prime Directive. And so,
Yes.
and then Picard follows that up with, that crossed my mind.
Yes.
And he is, so maybe this particular planet does not have the weapon power that the Federation has. So they could easily just walk in guns a-blazing and Han Solo it, but which
I would approve of.
Right. So they could easily just take the planet for themselves, but that's also not showing the respect towards
their culture and what they're doing
on that planet.
Okay.
It's interesting you say that.
That makes sense too.
We see, if you watch Picard, I don't, Tim, I'm sure you haven't watched Picard.
I haven't watched a stitch of it. The only thing I've watched series-wise completely in full so far, I've watched season 1 of Strange New Worlds. That was my gateway drug. That's what got me interested in Star Trek and going, well, if I like this, maybe I'll like some other stuff from Star Trek. And then I went to, I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it from the beginning, and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to power through TOS, and I got to season 2, and I went, well, this is Bumpkiss, we're moving on, and I went to TNG. So,
well, there's a scene, and I'll try to speak to it without giving too much, obviously, It's already old, so if you haven't watched it, there's technically no spoilers anyways. But I'm trying to go to the point that there's a scene, or well, actually not a scene. It's not like an entire, season, where you could see what the Federation would have been like without the Prime Directive.
Okay.
And if you think about the Federation without the Prime Directive, you're looking at an entity like the Klingons and the Romulans would love to be, where they would just dominate the entire galaxy.
Okay.
We got to see Starfleet in that light, and it wasn't good. So that would be another aspect to see. Okay, how important the Prime Directive is for Star Trek, because it prevents Star Trek becoming something like that. Because remember, the more power you have, the more you're going to get corrupted.
Sure, absolute
There
power
has to be
corrupts
check and
absolutely.
balances.
Yeah, understood. Okay. All right. Well, I think that this conversation has been helpful. I think it's kind of pointed me in the right direction. It doesn't mean that, Robert, I won't send you messages from time to time going, what in the bloody hell did I just watch? I'm pretty sure that's going to happen still. I'm still trying to get a foothold in this Trekkerverse and understand what's going on. And like I said, for me, it's a complete change of viewpoint and approach from anything that I've come from, because I watch Star Wars and things where like that, where if there's something wrong, you just go and you blow it up and you walk away, everything's fine. So, and that's not what happens here. There's conversation, discussion.
I'm not gonna call you team anymore. I'm gonna call you Space Cowboy.
Pew, pew, pew.
So exactly. But yeah. So it's just getting my mind to rotate a little bit and see it in a different light. And I think that for me is where the challenge has been. But I think like I said, I think that this has been a helpful conversation for me, because it's helped me kind of see the Prime Directive in a different, instead of being the hard fast rule, as being the morally flexible guideline dependent upon the captain and what's going on. Jesse wants to know, what's my nickname? Maybe don't answer that. Well, let's see. There's Jesse and Michelle. They're from Crusher Convo. They both call themselves Bevheads. I'm going to have to think about this one, Jesse, but we're going to come up with a good one. Don't you worry about it. I'll message you in the chat later. Anyway, okay.
Kirk spread this bird. That way you can piss him off.
All right. So let's see. We've got let's see. All right, so hey, let's shift gears real quick. We're winding down on time here for our hour-long live show that we do. Now, looking forward to some of the upcoming shows that we have for you on our Friday pre-recorded episodes. Speaking of all things Star Trek, we're very excited that this Friday we have Armin Shimmerman from Star Trek's DS9. He made a second trip back to the FSF PopCast. Now, one of the reasons why we had Armin come back is, number one, he's awesome. He really is. He's one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. Incredibly gracious and awesome. And then, exactly. I'm glad you caught on to that. And then secondly, what's that?
I want something from the promenade.
And then secondly, Armin has a new book that was just released, part of his Ilaria series. It's called Imbalance of Power, and we talk about that, his writing process, a whole bunch of stuff. And then also the following Friday, this is where Nick's Hint of Strawberries comes in. We release our interview with Jewel State. Also, you may remember her as Kaylee Fry from Firefly and Dr. Jennifer Keller from Stargate Atlantis. So we have an opportunity to sit down with her, and we had just an absolute blast with both of those guys. And both of those interviews contain questions from you, our listeners. So make sure that if you submitted a question for them, to make sure you tune in and see if we mention you by name and use your question. Because if we did use your question, you got a shout out in the show. So.
And last Friday, our guest was George Bouza. George has been entertaining animation and live action audiences for years by bringing their favorite characters to life, like Beast, from the iconic X-Men animated series of the 1990s. We talked to George about his time on that show and how it's coming back to Disney Plus in the fall of 2023 as
Nice.
X-Men 97, and how it's picking up right where the other episodes finished off. We also presented George with questions from our listeners, and he was more than happy to answer them as well. You can still find that episode of the FSF PopCast on our YouTube channel and our favorite audio podcast providers.
Now, also, I just put this in the chat, and this will be down in the show notes down below, but there's an eBay link for this picture right here. This is a signed photo that George Buza sent to us, and you have opportunity to bid on this. And there's also one that you can buy just straight out. So there's two separate links for this. There's one that's a bid, because we have two photos. One's a bid, and one is an auction. But there you go. You see a nice up close of that really nicely done signature on the Beast photo. Now, the cool thing about that is if when you bid on this and you win this auction, not only do you get that really cool signed George Buza photo, but 100% of the proceeds go to benefit a charity that is very near and dear to our hearts, and that's called Wish Upon a Teen. Wish Upon a Teen is a great organization based here out of Michigan, and what they do is they work with sick kids in hospitals who have to stay for an extended period of time. For instance, many of you already know this story, but when my daughter had to stay 97 days in the hospital, they redecorated her room to make it feel as much like her bedroom and a fun room as they can make a hospital room seem. But they bring them toys, and they brought my daughter an Amazon Echo Dot so that she could listen to music, because my daughter was paralyzed from the neck down, couldn't use her hands, and so she could at least call out to the Echo to listen to music and different things. And they brought her new sheets and lights and all these different things. They're phenomenal organization. And over the last couple of years, because of the coronavirus and everything else, they've had to really scale back on their charity functions and things, because they do have so many sick kids and they have to be careful with them and getting them out and around these different things. So, like I said, 100% of your bid for this amazing George Buza signed photo goes to benefit that charity, Wish Upon a Teen, and helps them to continue to help out sick kids when they need it most. So you can either bid on it or you can go buy it directly. And either way, 100% of the profits go to Wish Upon a Teen. Now, yeah. And as you see it just as one last final reminder, as you see on the banner down below, if you haven't already done it, please click like and surprise. Yeah. Like and subscribe. Surprise! You subscribe to our show. But yeah, please remember to click like and subscribe. It helps our show to continue to grow. We've been getting some amazing guests, and we just mentioned a couple of them there, but we have so many more guests. We have Cal Dodd, who played Wolverine on X-Men and X-Men 97. Yeah, he's the best to ever done it, bub. And he comes on the show and he talks with us, and it is amazing as long as he can keep his ear pods in. So that's fun. He's a really good dude, but yeah. Yeah, so check that out. So stick with us the next couple of
years.
His ear pods kept falling out, and he was having some issues.
And so I think Apple has a thing or a setting or something where, like, when you take it out, it disconnects you from a call. So he constantly kept.
So he would drop out. He would have to come back. It's going to be a feat of editing, but it'll be fun. But yes, and Jesse, absolutely, X-Men does rule. So, you know what? I just figured out what I'm going to call Jesse, because she loves Beverly Crusher, who's a redhead, and there's an X-Men with red hair. You are Rogue. Okay, there it is. Jesse is Rogue. All right. But hey, before we say goodbye to everybody, Robert, Gio, remind everybody where they can find you out on the things.
Robert?
Well, we are Science Fiction Remnant, and we talk sci-fi. And yes, all sci-fi. And you can find us everywhere.
There you go. And if you still have any questions as to what everywhere is, please message him. You can find him on Twitter as @sci-fi remnant, and you can message him, ask him questions. They do a lot of interaction on there. They're a bunch of chatty Cathys with their Twitter hashtags and things. You'll have a lot of fun with them.
Make sure you like and surprise there too.
Yeah, exactly. Like and surprise Sci-Fi Remnant as well. So, All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for tonight. For those who stuck in for the whole show, thank you for hanging out. Hope that this was as informative to you guys as it was to me, but you guys are probably not Star Trek noobs and didn't need to have your handheld to get walked through what the Prime Directive is and what the Prime Directive isn't. But thank you to Robert and Gio for coming along and helping us to explain it. And Nick, thank you for being patient with me and not laughing every time you tried to answer one of my questions. So, all right, guys. That's going to conclude it for us. Thank you so much. Until next time. Goodbye. Oh, hey, and remember, next Monday is our Star Wars RPG, our 2.5 hour special edition, extra fun live show. Come back for that. You guys are going to make sure that you're going to want to be there for that. Anyway, and bye, Jesse. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for your interactions as well. All right, now I mean it. Goodbye.
Ciao.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF PopCast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSF PopCast, or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the contact link. Thanks again, and hope you